Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Welcome to my stream. I am super excited for tonight. This is a subject that I very much like a lot. I really love Walter Benjamin as a literary theorist, and I think that he says a lot about literary theory and about art theory that we can really apply to mimetic theory. And of course, as soon as I look up, you can see the beautiful reflection there. But anyway, I'm gonna actually raise it a little. I've had a little bit of a makeup mishap at the very last moment, so I feel a little chaotic right now, but it's okay. Anyway. Yes, welcome. Okay, cool. We are all set now. So, Walter Benjamin was a Jewish scholar and in the early 20th century. He is someone associated with the Frankfurt School, and he was friends with Brecht. He was also related to Hannah Arendt through her marriage to his brother. And so he was a thinker. He wrote essays on Baudelaire, Goethe, Kafka, Krauss, Proust, among others, and did literary translation. And one of his big concerns was the reproduction of art and art criticism as well. And he also comes from a Marxian background, like many of the people within the Frankfurt School did. So he's always, thanks, Catherine, nice to see you. But it's always, so he, wait, I got distracted by Catherine, love you. Anyway, so yeah. A lot of different people associated with Frankfurt School are people like Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, or Adorno, as well as Marcuse, Horkheimer, all of these types of people. And a lot of them were Jewish. A lot of them were very influenced by Marxism and also Freud and psychoanalysis. So they also wrote a lot about media and mass media, which was just then even starting to become a thing. And so especially in the interwar period, there was a lot of writing and thinking going on. That's the time between World War I and World War II. And unfortunately, when being a Jewish thinker, when Hitler came to power in 1932 in Germany, Benjamin was from Berlin. He decided that he was going to try to leave for America because he felt that he was going to be persecuted, which he probably, was going to be persecuted. I mean, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is literally about Frankl's experiences in a concentration camp and how he survived that. And the point is that, unfortunately, Walter Benjamin felt he was in a situation that he could not escape without being turned over to the Nazis when he was at the French and Spanish border. And he killed himself with an overdose of morphine. And so obviously this just fits itself into the overall tragedy of the time, especially for Jewish intellectuals, Jewish individuals of all sort, of course. But yeah, it's very, very, very unfortunate, and he was only 48. So anyway, I really love his work. I first read the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction in graduate school in my class about Proust, Kafka, and Joyce. And a lot of the times I will accidentally say, or like people will accidentally say, art in the age of mechanical reproduction as the title of this essay. But it's actually the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. And, excuse me, this distinction is actually really important, and once we start talking about the essay, it will become more obvious why it's important. And so, all right, so you don't necessarily have to have read this essay. It like might help, but I'm also going to be heavily quoting from it and attempting to explain this in a way that will be, let me fix that, in a way that will be useful and interesting to people who have not read the essay. It's a very good essay, and you can find a version of it for free online. Just, Google it, Walter Benjamin, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. And in the title of the stream, I had to shorten it because of character restrictions, but whatever. Okay, cool. So Benjamin starts the essay by explaining that in theory, the work of art has always been replicable, as in some master paints an art. Oh my God. So a very talented artist paints a work of art, and then someone else can come along and ostensibly have the same technical skills as this artist and then reproduce the artwork. Yeah. So Benjamin acknowledges that art has always been able to be replicated. But the reason that he's writing this essay is because he is claiming that the mechanical reproduction of the work of art, and we'll get into exactly what that is, represents something new and has actually changed the way that we interact with art and starts to change the actual nature of art itself. And oops. Anyway, so as he says, for the first time in the process of pictorial production, photography freed the hand of the most important artistic functions, which henceforth developed only upon the eye looking into a lens. So with the advent of photography, artists are quote unquote relieved of having to paint something or sculpt something. They only have to click the camera and the light from the scene will go into the camera and be captured on the negative. And he highlights two aspects which have had repercussions on the standard of art, and that is the reproduction of art itself and the art of film. So the mechanical reproduction of art has changed aspects of art, and as part of this, we have also the art of film, both still and moving, which we will get into later. And I think I gotta let my kitty out the door, or he will whine. There we are. Okay, cool. So anyway, now that the cat is taken care of, so when art first came about, it was very tied to ritual. And then art started to be tied to the social, political, economic arenas in which it was displayed. So this would be something like a cathedral and the art within the cathedral. It's both used in ritual and displayed. And then at one point, the museum came about, for example. And there is not so much a ritual being taken place in the museum, but rather the work is being displayed. And for example, with the Mona Lisa, people travel and go to see the artwork, and it's very, very famous, and it's also located in one place. We're going to see the water lilies in the museum, in MoMA. I'll just say that. This is a single painting, even if that print has been reproduced other places. The importance, especially if we're thinking about, like in the 1850s, there wasn't this same ability to just like reproduce and reprint prints of artwork. So there was a lot of importance placed on the single work of art. And so in this way, pieces of art, the originals, could be said to have authenticity. And also, within this authentic object, that object held within it all of its history, as in all of the places it had been. And a lot of times when we're dealing with famous works of art, they have been stored incorrectly or damaged in some way, subject to like a bomb dropping on it, or a fire, anything like that. Really, that original object holds the history of it in a way that maybe a print of a photograph wouldn't, or like a print of a painting wouldn't, which would generally be a print of a photograph is a print of a painting is usually just like a photograph of that painting printed. But anyway, so for much of history, a reproduction of a piece of art was considered forgery. Usually, unless the artist commissioned help from pupils so he could make multiple copies of the piece of art, to make it more famous so it can go in more museums, etc., etc. Or if, for example, that art was something that was like commissioned for currency, for example, or any kind of like official seal. So these pieces of art would not be considered forgeries, whereas if someone, painted a copy of the Mona Lisa and tried to like pass it off as the authentic thing, as the authentic work of art, then that would be a forgery. So one of the main differences between the reproduction of a painting and the reproduction of a photograph is that the painting relies on the manual reproduction. Someone actually has to paint it, while the photograph relies on process reproduction. It relies on a mechanical process in order to be reproduced. So the pupil looks at the master's painting and then copies it onto another, canvas using their eyes, whereas the photographer captures a scene on a negative through a chemical reaction. And there are aspects of that scene that the photographer captured that were actually might not have been observable to their naked eye at the time, but could be enhanced in the development process through like darkroom techniques or whatever. And the proliferation of copies of a photograph allows for the work of art to be absorbed in a variety of spaces, and each of these spaces lend themselves to their own qualities, which for the observer of the artwork change the very nature of the artwork itself. So when we can see perhaps, if you think about, you know, a nice little picture of a cabin, let's say a nice little painted picture. No, not painted. Okay, no, not painted. Okay, so a print of a nice little scenic cabin, pretty innocuous, let's imagine it, on the wall of a dentist's office. So we're imagining this nice little print of a picture of a scenic little cottagecore cabin, and it's in a dentist's office. The way that we would react to that piece of art would be different than if we saw it in a haunted house or something, or we saw it in a dark room. That painting that could seem innocuous or welcoming even in one place could actually seem kind of creepy and weird in another. And so the fact that photography is literally designed so that each negative can produce and will produce many, many copies of itself is what Benjamin is pointing to as the difference. And so the authenticity of an art object is more vulnerable than for other types of objects. So we even enter into the discussion about authenticity when it comes to artwork in a way that we do not enter into that conversation with other objects. Even if they take a lot of skill to produce, even if they are culturally very important and significant, then it doesn't matter. So let's take the example of a Rolex. Each watch produced by Rolex is authentically a Rolex. The history of one Rolex has nothing to do with the history of another Rolex, as in, you know, a businessman can wear a Rolex, and then an influencer can wear a Rolex, and those two Rolexes live very, very different lives, so to say. But that doesn't make either of them less of a Rolex. And so, on the other hand, in the case of an art object, its reproduction represents a forgery because the history of the original isn't necessarily present. So if we could just snap our fingers and do an instant reproduction of the Cypress Trees by Van Gogh, just snap our fingers and an exact replica down to the very, very, very tiniest like brush of paint and ridge of paint. That is literally possible to do. It would take more than a snap of the fingers, but it is actually literally possible. However, one of those objects would be authentic and one of them wouldn't, because one of them would contain the history of the object, whereas the other one doesn't have that same history. So one of those was touched by Van Gogh, and one of them wasn't. And the authenticity is tied to that history. And once again, we enter into this idea or this conversation about authenticity more readily with art objects than we do with other types of objects. And in this way, photography has transformed art to be more like a natural object than before. So if you have, like, I don't know, I really like the photographer Nan Goldin, and I think she used film, pretty sure. But anyway, so if you have a copy, or if you have a print of a photograph that was produced by the artist, that artist might have done many, many, many different prints of this photograph, and those prints might have been different. There are mechanical issues that could happen in a darkroom, or the artist might have chosen to highlight a different aspect of the negative through burning the image or dodging the image. Both darkroom techniques, they can affect the light, the contrast, etc., etc. And so these two prints of the photograph, there's not the same type of argument over, like, quote, authenticity. Though you could make more of an argument for photographs that are printed in a darkroom where, as opposed to other techniques. But the point is that the mechanical reproduction of art, and now we're kind of in the digital reproduction of art, but with Benjamin's essay, like, the mechanical reproduction of the art changes the nature of art, and it also changes the way in which we view art. So that's his whole point. I would like to read a part from this essay, and this is a direct quote from the essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. One might subsume the eliminated element in the term aura and go on to say, that which withers in the age of mechanical reproduction is the aura of the artwork. This is a symptomatic process whose significance points towards the realm of art. One might generalize by saying, the technique of reproduction detaches the produced object from the domain of tradition. By making any reproductions, it substitutes a plurality of copies for a unique existence, and permitting the reproduction to meet the beholder or listener in his own particular situation, it reactivates the object reproduced. These two processes lead to a tremendous shattering of tradition, which is the averse of the contemporary crisis and renewal of mankind. Both processes are intimately connected with the contemporary mass movements. So, as Benjamin claims, because photography substituted a plurality of copies for a unique existence, we now, in today's day and age, it's kind of just second nature. We understand very, very intuitively that there's not one authentic version of a meme. Only the material on which the meme is based. So we can understand a format as a collection of iterations of a meme, all in dialogue with each other, all made in relation with each other, all with different authors, but the same authenticity. Iterations of a meme are actually subject to many of the same linguistic and visual plays which characterize our everyday conversations that we have on the internet and off the internet. And an internet meme can only really be successful within a certain domain if the people in that domain can be expected to be aware of the associated media. And a lot of this media is remixed within meme culture. And in fact, when a format has been around long enough, people actually start mashing up that format with other formats as the ultimate recursive iteration of memetics. And so Benjamin talks a lot about the advent of film. And he talks a lot about the advent of film and also ties it to alienation. and ties it to a reality that is presented to you, but isn't necessarily the reality that... Okay, I'm going to explain it this way. First, let's go backwards a little bit. So a big thing within this essay is the idea that when art objects first came about, they were ritualized objects used for rituals, and that's why they were like so very, very important and so authentic, and you know, people could reproduce them, but the history of that ritual and of that object would be divorced from the reproduction, and that reproduction would be worthless in a way. But photography and later film, you know, kind of broke that whole setup. And so the thing is with film is that so in the essay, Benjamin compares the experience of viewing a piece of drama on the stage versus viewing that same piece of drama in a movie. So in a stage production, the whole scene is performed at the same time, and is the first act comes before the second act, comes before the third act, etc., etc. Whereas with a movie, reality is more constructed than that. As in, you can start filming the end of a film, you know, and then end up at the beginning. And also within a scene, you could have 2 camera angles. And also, if you were actually on the movie set, you would see a very, very different scene than what is going to be presented to the audience you're going to see a very different scene on a movie set than what the audience would see when they were watching that film. And so Benjamin makes the argument that this further divorces us from the aura or the tradition of art. And so we can see that this is like very, very related to internet culture and the way that we are able to interact with meme formats, meme iterations, and the way we deal with the idea of authenticity. Because if there's like a meme format going around and you make an iteration of that format, people aren't going to be like, oh, you stole my meme. I mean, they might, but then other people are going to laugh at them. It's not going to be a valid concern. And there's a lot of debate right now about stealing memes, about whether or not that can be done. And so you have examples, for example, like Fuck Jerry, who would take all these memes that other people had made and then make a bunch of money off of them and use it for their own aggrandizement. And then you had other accounts that started to kind of like bother them about it, and that forced FJ to start like asking if they could steal people's memes, essentially. But when there's not that same like monetary gain of one party using the work of another, people tend to be less concerned about it, about the stealing of memes or anything like that. And certainly people do not consider you copying the format of a meme to be you stealing a meme or creating a meme that is not authentic to that format. I wanted to quote just one more part. So I really love this quote. In the studio, the mechanical equipment has penetrated so deeply into reality that its pure aspect, freed from the foreign substitution instance of equipment is the result of a special procedure, namely the shooting by the specially adjusted camera and the mounting of the shot together with other similar ones. The equipment-free aspect of a reality here has become the height of artifice. The site of immediate reality has become an orchid in the land of technology. So what he is talking about here is the fact that this appearance of reality that we see in movies is actually so artificial that we don't even understand how artificial it is. And especially with the way that we perceive the moving image is very, very different than the way we perceive still images. And with moving images or images that change, we tend to create a sequence out of them. So if I show a picture of me walking down a hallway, and then I show a picture of a doorknob and my hand reaching towards it, and then if we have a shot from inside the room of the door opening, we understand that there is a person walking down a hallway. They reach towards the door and they open that door, even though that hand, it can be cut off, like the shot might only show this much of the hand, but we understand that the hand actually belongs to the person walking down the hallway. And so this is a different type of perception. And the fact that things can be reproduced and shuffled around is really something that evolved first in photography in the still image that really broke the work of art from its aura. And then what actually represented a further breakage of that tradition was the moving image, where things are pieced together and our brain makes sense of them, because remember, if we put things next to each other, they affect each other. And we can see this in the way that our brain processes information. A lot of optical illusions are actually the result of this, and the way we perceive colors is also extremely dependent on their context. 1 minute, there's this, 1 minute. Okay, so just one more note on film. And this is another quote that I'm going to read from the essay. Even if one has a general knowledge of the way people walk, one knows nothing of a person's posture during the fractional second of a stride. The act of reaching for a lighter or a spoon is familiar routine, yet we hardly know what really goes on between hand and metal, and not to mention how this fluctuates with our moods. Here, the camera intervenes in the resources of its lowerings and liftings, its interruptions and isolations, its extensions and accelerations, its enlargements and reductions. The camera introduces us to unconscious optics, as does psychoanalysis to unconscious impulses. So, the fact that we so routinely observe each other and ourselves, I mean, right now, y'all are perceiving me through a video. The fact that we are observing others through a medium that does in some ways capture reality and in some ways obscures reality, it reveals certain truths about ourselves, and it also makes us very sensitive to certain irregularities or certain contextual accidents. For example, he Benjamin makes the argument that once Freud came up with the idea of the Freudian slip, people started perceiving the things that they said differently. Because in the past, people would have seen that a Freudian slip as an error in speech. But once Freud came about and made the claim that a Freudian slip can actually reveal more about us than planned speech, it changed the way that people perceive their conversations. And the fact that we are so exposed to film changes the way in which we perceive reality. And so I've been talking a lot about film. I've been talking a lot about, photographs here. But when we think about the internet, it's a totally different type of reproduction, because we're not even talking about physical objects anymore, right? We are talking about digital objects, or objects that are displayed on a screen. Artwork that is made for the web, and artwork which has to exist on the web, and can, some of it can be physically printed, and some of it cannot be physically printed. And the thing is that if I send like a message on Instagram that is to someone else, I'm sending someone a meme or whatever, that person now has the ability to see that meme. But would we really say they have a copy of the meme? No, we are both observing a digital object. And then once they make a copy or save a copy to their phone, that's a way in which that data is collected and stored on the phone. And so just in the same way that Benjamin analyzed his society and analyzed our perceptions and our society through looking at the way we perceive things because of the reproducibility of art, we can look at the way that the internet and the way that digital reproduction or mimetic reproduction has influenced our society and has conditioned us to see certain things, has conditioned us to see certain patterns. And once we learn these patterns, we're also able to reproduce them. And so a huge part of memetics is the fact that as long as you know the conventions of a certain domain, you in general can participate in that domain. For example, MeIRL on Reddit is a very fast-moving subreddit. It has a lot of inside jokes, and anyone who understood those inside jokes could post something on there. And if that thing that they posted followed those conventions, people would generally, react in a good way towards it. And if it didn't, they would, brand it as irrelevant, and they would just ignore it or downvote it or whatever. I have this weird hair on the side of my head. Okay. Why is it I just can't find it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Hello, Syrup King. Okay. Anyway, so when we're looking at internet culture, we have this artwork. The artwork we're looking at are internet memes. And, if you're a person who has been tuning in to this broadcast regularly, you will understand that when we say meme, what we really mean is internet meme in general. And that there are memes that are outside of the internet, and memes existed for a long time. Memes have existed forever because according to like Richard Dawkins, who originally coined the term, a meme is a unit of imitation. And it is something that is imitated. And so this propensity towards imitation is what has changed the way that we perceive the world and has democratized, in a way, one of the most important, if not the most important, artistic movements of the last 50 years would be the artistic mimetic movement, because it is an artistic movement in a way, filled with people who are, I mean, it's kind of funny, even the idea, I was about to say like outsider artists, but like, no, the people who are outsider artists are are the fine artists, actually, because there's way fewer of them and the bar to entry to that field is way higher. But anyway, so Benjamin also talks about Dadaists, who a lot of people on the internet really identify with, especially people who are into post-ironic memes, you know, or deep fried memes, or just kind of nonsensical memes, or hyper-referential memes, which a lot of deep fried memes are actually hyper-referential. And they have so many references that the only way to understand them is if you're an extremely online individual. And these types of memes really had their day in the sun, so to say, back in around 2018 with the advent of worst meme. But yeah, with the advent of and memes like that, this was especially when memes were becoming super mainstream. And I think people were looking for new ways to distinguish themselves from normies by, you know, having these super hyper-referential, but with the appearance of nonsense memes. And another thing with especially deep fried memes was the reference within the meme, because of the deep fried format, to the actual structures of the internet. So one thing that happens when something is reproduced on the internet, when you make a copy of something for your phone or for your desktop or whatever, when you save that copy, a lot of the times information from the original image is actually not included. And so when this happens over and over and over, it leads to something called JPEG I can't pronounce this word, degradation. So JPEG degradation. Here, let me make sure I'm saying it right. Yeah, JPEG degradation. I know what that word means and everything, I just can't pronounce it. I can't pronounce words in general. But anyway, so when you save this image over and over, and that's what would happen on the internet, is essentially someone would post this fresh new meme, and then it'd keep getting saved, and then people would edit and re-uploading it, editing it, re-uploading it. And once a meme was not fresh and new anymore, copies of it would have more JPEG degradation. And so what people started doing was actually artificially creating this loss of data as part of their memes to signal that what they were doing within this meme, they were aware that the meme was dead or that the meme was silly or something. And so it was a way to signal within the artwork. Oh my God, you're being so crazy right now. The kitty is being super hyper. But anyway, he just wants attention. So anyway, silly kitty. So now let's talk a little bit more about ritual. And so originally a work of art would be tied to its authenticity, to the importance of the first version of it. And then that started to lessen, started to be less of a thing. And within ritual, there became what's called the cult of beauty. And so artwork became less attached to its ritualistic purposes and more attached to the idea of beauty. And this idea is something that society definitely put on the artwork. Why does art have to be beautiful? It literally does not have to be beautiful. But that was something that was very important to people, mostly before the Impressionists. There was this cult and importance on beauty, as well as accurately representing reality, whatever that means. So now we're gonna kind of switch gears a little, and I'm gonna show you some art. So here we are. This first one, and I'm going to be resizing these in between. So if anybody in the chat can tell me the title of this work of art, can anybody tell me? It's Stonehenge, obviously. What is the meaning of Stonehenge? It reads, This circle of stacked rocks has baffled and mystified historians and antiquarians for thousands of years, but the true purpose and meaning of Stonehenge still remains shrouded in mystery even today. So yeah, it's Stonehenge, but does anybody see anything else going on? Any other piece of artwork here? Is there another piece of art within this painting? Within this picture, excuse me. It's not a painting, but a picture. Yeah. So there's Stonehenge. Yeah, exactly. And there is something else within this picture. And if someone wants to guess what that something else is, just to let everybody else in the chat understand that there's another piece of art here, does anybody want to venture a guess what the other piece of art is? I think there's at least one person in the chat who knows what this other piece of art is. No, not the sundial. It is a sundial functionally. Functionally, one of the purposes of Stonehenge, they believe to be like a sundial. But there's another pattern within these stones that is especially relevant to us. Well, you wouldn't have learned it in art history, actually, Catherine. I think James knows. I think James A. knows. And if James A. wants to say what this piece of art work within Stonehenge is, then James A. should absolutely do that. Yes, thank you. This, of course, is an iteration of the immortal meme known as Loss. Loss.jpg. And so we have the single figure, the double figure, then we have the double figure again, and then the figure standing up and the figure lying down. So this is a very famous meme. Yeah, we can't get into these yet. This is a very famous meme. It's actually a meme that has been on the internet since 2008. This is a meme from 2008 that has had several renaissances where this meme is represented. And so what this meme is actually kind of hard to explain. And Okay, so I will show, let me get through. Oh my God. Okay, so this meme is based off this comic on this panel. So Control Alt Delete was a webcomic, and a webcomic is something that is not, it's not something that's like super popular on the internet today, but it was something that was super popular in the 2000s, before 2010, especially because we didn't really on the internet have the ability to, you know, watch video or stream video so much. And so if you saw in Stonehenge, you had the one figure, the two figures again at a slightly different angle, and then the figure standing up and the figure lying down. And to explain the whole context of this meme, I wanted to show a video from one of my favorite YouTube creators. Oh my gosh, I hate when this happens. Why does my mouse always disappear? Okay, so I wanted to show one of my favorite, a video from one of my favorite YouTubers and internet historians, Wang. So I'm going to try to remember to unmute myself once this is over, but we will see.
Before every single marginally talented geek decided that they wanted to make a podcast or a YouTube channel, they made a webcomic. This gold rush was probably inspired in 1998 by the runaway success of Penny Arcade. Penny Arcade, as you probably know, is a webcomic about two guys who like to play video games. People saw that and they're like, hey, I play video games too. Let me get rich and famous by drawing big gaping mouths and explainy hands. And thus, the internet became absolutely flooded with webcomics about video games and the people who play them. And that's not to say that they were all doing the same thing. There were a few that tried to distinguish themselves. Take Overclocked, for example, which led to the much more popular OC Remix. Overclocked was a webcomic that focused mainly on the growing emulation scene at the time. And then you had 8-Bit Theater, which took sprites from Final Fantasy games and used them to parody the genre cliches. And then you had VG Cats, which instead of two guys, it was two cats. I'm not even gonna lie, VG Cats was probably my favorite of all of them. But the truth is that some people didn't really want something different. Some people were so addicted to reading the story of two guys sitting on a couch talking about video games that they really just wanted the great value version of Penny Arcade. And in 2002, a comic called Control Alt Delete swooped in to give everybody their fix of wide open mouths and explainy hands. Control Alt Delete, aka the Kirkland Signature Gaming webcomic, was created by a guy named Tim Buckley. Not the musician Tim Buckley, this Tim Buckley. By many people, this is considered to be the absolute worst gaming webcomic in history. And the thing about it is, it started off very self-aware. Control Alt Delete began as a parody of this very saturated genre before it quickly became the very thing it was mocking. Let's take a look at the first Control Alt Delete comic. So, is a strip about two guys who sit around and play video games? Seems a tad cliched, doesn't it? Nah, it's tried and true. Besides, we have a hook. Oh really? What? We've got a third character! And the third character is a watermelon. Hee hee. What? Serious guy is not amused. And now, that joke that you saw there, where the wacky guy does something wacky and random and the serious guy gives him a look, that's basically the main joke that this comic has, and it repeats itself over and over again for 15 or more years, with those same exact facial expressions. That's actually a major point of criticism that a lot of people had for this comic, that they just paste the same facial expressions over and over and over again. Of course, you're watching this on YouTube, where half the channels are presented by characters that only have 3 or 4 facial expressions. So, you know, glass houses and whatnot. And honestly, I think that would be perfectly fine if the writing were stronger, but it wasn't. It was basically that same joke format that I showed you there, or really long rants. Just take a look at all of these words, and don't worry, I'm not gonna read them to you, I just want you to soak them in. Seriously, Control-Alt-Delete is not the X-Men, and Tim Buckley is not Chris Claremont. And we probably should talk a bit more about the comic's creator, Tim Buckley, because really, he's at the very heart of why you're probably here, the Lost meme. So let's get to know Tim Buckley a little bit. Here's what he has to say. My name is Tim Buckley. I'm a 24-year-old gamer. I've played every violent video game in existence. I have never killed anyone. There are millions of gamers just like me, and we're getting sick of people like you blaming your problems on us. Ignorance causes violence, not video games. Man up and take responsibility. We outnumber you and the people that think like you. Don't fuck with us. So Tim Buckley is very clearly a guy who cares a lot about gaming and gamers. And it seemed like he was perfectly content to spend years churning out this comic that was mostly humorous, very rarely serious, or had any kind of continuity. And his readers were more than happy to read it. But then, all of a sudden, or what seemed to be all of the sudden, Tim got up one day and decided he wanted to be a fucking artiste. It begins with a pregnancy storyline. Ethan, I just got back from the doctor's appointment. I'm pregnant. And he peed himself. And this comic, which was the beginning of a much longer story arc, divided the fan base a bit. Some people were perfectly fine with Tim Buckley stretching his arms out a little bit and trying to take the comic in new creative directions. But a lot of people, probably way more people, were like, what the hell is happening to our gaming comic? They really didn't want this thing they read that was mostly about people talking about video games to suddenly turn into some serious family drama. And over the next few months, references to the impending baby and the wedding were peppered in amongst the usual types of goofy, wacky comics. But that baby was a ticking time bomb, and a lot of the audience was dreading what direction the comic might go in as soon as it was born. Well, boy did they get lucky. Without further ado, I present to you Tim Buckley's most famous creation, Loss. She had a miscarriage. No baby. Problem solved. What? This is probably the most that a vaguely humorous comic strip has ever or ever will completely blindside its audience. There are ways that you can tackle serious issues in comedy, but when you miss, you really miss. Like, everybody remembers that episode of The Fresh Prince where Will gets shot and it's all serious and whatnot, but that didn't totally derail the show. Like, whatever that was, Loss is the opposite of that. And in an attempt to get in front of the obvious controversy that this caused, Tim Buckley published a blog post on the same day. First, he addressed the controversy over deciding to take the comic in a serious direction. I know that everybody has their own idea of what Control-Alt-Delete is supposed to be. Some people feel it's a video game comic and the character stories are just filler or don't belong, and some people think it's a story comic and the one-shots are just filler. Most times it's categorized as a gaming comic, which is fine and understandable. When asked directly though, I describe Control-Alt-Delete as a gamer comic or a comic about gamers. Semantics perhaps, but an important distinction for me. While the strip has always and will always have its foundation firmly rooted in gaming, it's not the only topic I want to tell jokes and stories about. He also stated that he had planned this story arc from the very beginning. As I've said in the past, the grand plan for the comic and its characters has been written for years. I knew that, and how, Ethan was going to propose to Lila when I introduced her into the comic. I knew when he proposed that shortly before the wedding Lila was going to get pregnant and then miscarry, and I had to wait 2 years to write it. I know what happens next, and I know how they handle it. I know what happens either further down the line. I know what Scott is doing in his room. I know who moves out and when. I know who dies and who doesn't die. And I know that, through all of it, Ethan is still Ethan, Lila is still Lila, and Lucas is still Lucas, and they are still gamers. Damn, they should have got Tim Buckley to write for Lost. And then he went on to explain why he did the miscarriage story. Some many years ago, long before I started the comic, I was in a relationship and we suffered a miscarriage. Now, This relationship was toxic to begin with and doomed to fail regardless, so that the miscarriage was the straw that broke the camel's back and is no surprise. Later that week, this portion of Tim's statement would be republished in Cyanide and Happiness' parody of Lost. It should be noted that when I went to the Cyanide and Happiness website and saved this comic, the file name was Tim Actually Said This. And of course, Cyanide and Happiness would not be the only ones to parody this comic. If you're on this channel, you already know. You're a fellow traveler. You know how this story winds up. The Lost comic comes out and it goes on to be one of the internet's longest surviving memes, with parodies that become more and more minimalist and esoteric over the course of years. It's a meme that, for some reason, despite all odds, just refuses to stay dead. You think it's over with and then it just creeps its way back up.
Rise from your grave.
Why?
I don't know!
Can you imagine how it must feel to create a work that is so exceptionally terrible, it does the impossible and spawns a meme that refuses to stay dead? Well, in a 2015 interview with New York Magazine, Tim Buckley addressed this question, and surprisingly he seems to be taking it in stride, albeit with a little bit of resentment towards his audience's lack of a refined palate for his artistry. The piece is entitled, Talking to the Man Behind Lost, the internet's longest running miscarriage joke. You see, joke is in quotation marks, which means it's not really a joke. As for the memes, Buckley's reaction to them has varied over the years from anger because perhaps I had miscalculated my demographic's ability/willingness to approach such a sensitive subject matter, to frustration for CAD being pigeonholed as a wacky gamer comic. And on very rare occasions, as much as I hate to admit it, because I certainly don't want to make light of the subject matter itself, I found them quite amusing. Now he says he's flattered that something he made has been entertaining people for more than 7 years. And honestly, that's probably the best way you could possibly look at it. So there you have it, Story of Lost. Until next time, check out one of these other videos, I'm out.
I remember to unmute! Yeah! Okay, well, I love Wang. He is awesome. And gave us a pretty good summary of what Lost is. So, Lost was a comedy gaming web comic, and so yeah, it spawned this meme, the immortal meme Lost. And in the video, Wang asks, why won't it stay dead? And I think that Walter Benjamin explains why it won't stay dead. And we will explicate this very nowish. So just in case anybody's interested, this is a much longer video on Control-Alt-Delete by H-Bomber-Guy. And it's about 30 minutes, very good video. I recommend that you watch it after this stream is over. And so I just pasted that into the chat right there. And so yeah, one moment, I actually have to fix the presentation thing because it's showing all my slides out of order and I really can't have that. So I'm gonna throw on some music just so it's not silent, and I'm gonna fix this. I didn't really have to throw on the music or anything. That was actually way quicker than I thought it'd be. But anyway, so I just really want to show these in a search. Oh my God, you have to do that. Why do you, I hate, OBS is really trying me sometimes. That's all I gotta say. OBS really does try you sometimes. Okay, it is what it is. Sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. Okay, now we're good. Okay, we should be good now. So yes, so going back to this picture we have here, as you can see, we have the first figure, these two figures, right? And then these two figures down here, and then the figure standing up and the figure laying down. So this is a parody of the panel called Loss by Buckley in Control-Alt-Delete. And the reason that people really created all these parodies was because, for example, in the Wang video, we saw that a lot of the other kind of panels or plot lines they would have about insignificant stuff going on in their like apartment or whatever would be filled with dialogue, filled with drama, probably way more panels than whatever action was happening really deserved. And yet the one in which this extremely traumatic event happens to one of the main characters is literally 4 panels and has no dialogue. And it was this and the kind of like weird back and forth that the comic started to do because of the serious and joking subject matter clashing, that people on the internet started to, you know, parody this pattern as a way of making fun of comedy gaming webcomics and making fun of Control-Alt-Delete in general. And the reason that it has stuck around so long has to do with the ways in which the meme is remade through participation and through copying themselves, because, you know, there are tons of forums that are just Loss edits, and there are so many possibilities for edits of Loss. And what's really great is it goes back to just like making fun of this guy who used a woman as a plot device, which is really why I love the meme a lot, because I think it's like a feminist meme in a lot of ways, where we are really criticizing this kind of like culture, this gamer culture. And so let's think about Aura for a second. So comics have always been things that were meant to be reproduced. A lot of choices that comics would make in like the 20th century had to do with how well those things could be printed. And so even with comics, though, you can have like special editions of a comic or a limited run of a comic, where the thing is that even though you wouldn't say one copy of the comic is like more authentic than the other one, so long as they're in that limited edition run, comics that are made outside of that limited edition run, not official or like reprints or something, have a different value. And they have a different aura because they have a different history. So if you are in a limited run of a comic, let's say only 200, versions of a comic were printed, later on that comic's going to be very more valuable than a comic where 2 million were printed. And that in part is because of the history of each of those objects within the first print of the comic. And so the reason that I'm talking so long about comics is because that's what Lost is. It's a comic. But the thing is that now that we're in the domain of the internet, we are both seeing that these comics have been divorced from their auras, divorced from their history. They don't exist any particular place, but as a digital object observed through data and display. Unless someone printed it out, there was no printed version of Lost. There wasn't like a print edition of Control-Alt-Delete, for example. And so there's even been people on the internet who've kind of like made fun of this concept of the difference between like, a rare book or a rare comic and the fact that like actually memes can't be rare. And that was the Rare Pepe, the Rare Pepe movement or Rare Pepe collectors, where they felt they wanted to squirrel away all these Pepe edits that were extremely dank, and then release them one by one into the meme economy. So all of this is kind of like a play at what used to actually happen with comics. And so my point being that the comic originally, is divorced from tradition, divorced from an aura, because many copies of a comic can be made, and then it's divorced even further when we enter the internet age. And then it's abstracted even further because now Lost, which was originally in the form of a comic, broke free of the form of a comic, and this pattern started to be reproduced all over the internet by people in a type of ritual. And this ritual was hiding this pattern somewhere in plain sight, like we did earlier today. And then the people who are in the know, who know this pattern, are able to recognize it. And then they get a haha, oh yay, I'm so clever because I know Lost. And the thing is that this pattern is so obscure that if, let's say a meme page like posts a Lost edit, maybe 50% of people who look at it will know what it is. And they'll say haha and they'll press like. And then 25% of people are not going to know what the meme is and are going to be interested to look into it. And then the other 25% left are just going to be like, what the hell? And they're going to move on with their day because they're normies. And so the next time that the meme reappears, the next time there is a Lost renaissance, that last 25% of people are still going to be not in on the joke. And because it is an abstract joke, because it is a joke that we hide inside other jokes, it has this creative potential. And so I like to call it the immortal meme known as Lost. And so this is a very abstract Lost edit, and I actually have this tattooed on my body because I am a basic bitch for Lost. So if you can see it, it's like kind of hard to get the right angle. But I really love having this on my leg because whenever someone recognizes it in the wild, so to say, it is a very exhilarating experience. One time I was doing a class rap at Queens College, and one of the students looked at my leg, looked at the tattoo, and said, "Is that Lost?" And I said, "Yep," and he groaned. And he was just like, oh God, because he had got. No one expects your friendly NYPIRG representative to come into your classroom with a tattoo of loss. But that's what I did. Anyway, so I love this version of loss. It's very abstract, very wonderful. And so yeah, this is the original comic. It is so, this comic is like so ridiculous, but also very very reminiscent of being a gamer girl back. Then, so we have this one that's like, okay, who the hell is this guy? And why is he using my Xbox controller? This is Lila. She just moved in upstairs and she's a girl, Ethan. Hi. Pfft. Bullshit. Girls do not play video games. What do you take me for, an idiot? Please, mock me not. If a girl plays video games, hell must have froze. Ethan, what? Breasts. Very funny. Nothing he does is normal. Oh, wow. Tim, but he's so bad at comics. Okay, anyway, so this is like the most annoying crap ever. And this was literally my life in high school. And gamers rise up. Girl gamers rise up. That's all I gotta say. So here we have a wonderful edit. We've got SpongeBob with this block of ice. And once again, we see that we have the first figure, and then a double figure, another double figure, and they're on the opposite sides, and then someone standing up and something laying down. So if you were just like scrolling on Facebook and you didn't know loss, and then you saw this, you'd be like very confused. So this is 5 things everyone hates. And what's the 5th? What's the 5th? And bonus points if you can tell me what's wrong with this iteration. There is a grammatical mimetic error in this iteration. So bonus points if you can point that out. So what's the 5th thing? There's only 4 things here. The 5th thing is loss itself. And the grammatical error in this iteration is that this right here, it would be better if it were up here. Because if we look at the original, you have this here with 1 up and 1 down, and then the 2 people even, as opposed to 1 up, 1 down, and 2 people even. So there's actually literally a mistake in this version of the meme. So I don't know if this one will work on everybody's screens. But so yeah, I really like this edit. It's a very beautiful edit, very serene. And yeah, it's just one that you really have to contemplate for a long time. You know, it's kind of hidden. But really, I like this one because it's like if you're scrolling, you're not going to catch it. But if you stop and look, you can obviously see the figures here. And this was the propensity of people not only to create loss edits, but to make things into loss edits that previously weren't. Like this was just a picture that had 4 panels, essentially, or 4 areas. And so once you saw the 4-panel comic, people wanted to create a loss edit out of it. And that not only spreads the good word of loss, so to say, but it also makes this a more interesting photo. And probably the fact that this got turned into a loss edit made the original media go farther and more people see the media on the internet. So here we have one that's very similar. My mom really likes this one, but yeah, so this is just a picture, You know, I don't know whether this was edited or taken with, like, a lot of the history of this image is actually just like not there. And it's not contained, but we still have this pattern, the pattern of loss, and that has given this image a new life and made it so that it keeps getting spread throughout the internet. So this one, I don't really know if it is loss. But you know, back in 2018, if you saw something with 4 panels, it was automatically loss. So I really like this one a lot. You've got, which of the following is a non-linear transformation? Identity, scaling, translation, rotation. So the first thing, if you saw this, that would tip you off to the fact that it's loss, is that there are 4 categories. And then going beyond that, it becomes very, very abstracted towards the point that this isn't even like a pictorial meme anymore. A lot of these are pictorial. So we have, you know, these pictures that have patterns in them, but then we're able to represent the idea of loss in words. And so we have identity, scaling, transformation, and rotation. Wait, was it? Oh, translation. So we have identity, it's one person, scaling, which is making something smaller. And then, what was it? Translation. Oh my God, I have like the memory of a guppy. Oh yeah, translation. So you have this one moving over here and then this one being rotated here. So as we can see, we are starting to represent this abstract pictorial concept in words. And then we have the most abstracted. Like if you were just scrolling, there is, unless you knew what loss was, there is little chance that you would understand what the significance of these words were. So yeah, I'm gonna read it out loud really quick. How would you solve 4 issues at the hospital problem? ? Damn, grammar. Basically, you're in a hospital and there are 4 problems. You are able to solve all these problems. 1. In Northwest, there is a guy trying to open an emergency entrance and you can see urgency in his behavior. However, he appears to be alone. You have to help him get the door open. In Northeast, there's a guy asking for directions at the receptionist at a lobby. However, the receptionist doesn't know how to give directions. You must help the receptionist to explain where the guy has to go. In Southwest, there's a corridor with another guy and a doctor explaining medical conditions. However, doctor uses very scientific language that the guy has difficulty understanding. You must help the guy by translating doctor's words into layman's terms. In the Southwest, there's a woman lying on a hospital bed and a guy standing next to her. Woman's condition is stable, but both people look emotionally devastated. You must help them cope with emotional stress. Each of these tasks takes a bit of time. What priority order would you solve these problems? So obviously this is a loss edit. I mean, like, obviously and not obviously, right? So we have the Northeast. Sorry if it's a little off center here. But yeah, so we have the Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, and Southwest. And so, yes, this is an innovative meme and one that's very much abstracted from the original like kind of pictorial sense of the meme. And as a result, it's a very hidden meme where if someone just like saw this on the internet, they'd be extremely confused. But a person who like saw this, copied it, and posted it gets the social cachet of understanding it. And so I like this one because who the hell knows if it is the Lost Edit? I don't even know. I have no idea. And I also like that it says no correlation, because the reason I think this meme is funny is because, yeah, it's just a bunch of random dots, but like I see loss because I am prone to seeing loss everywhere. And yeah, so we could argue that there is the first one of identity. Yeah, it is totally 100% loss. And then, yeah, so then you have translation, the same types of patterns, but then it's labeled no correlation, which I love because it's kind of like messing with the viewer. We don't really know if it is loss, but it looks like it probably is. And so this is a series. I love this one a lot. This is from tumblr.com. The most worthless site on the internet. So here we have Hillary's 2016 loss prediction. RIP. So this was made before Trump got elected on tumblr.com. And then the person captioned it. Obviously, we have a loss edit. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in this slideshow. And we have someone captioned it, Hillary's 2016 loss prediction. And then someone else replies who is not in on the joke. Sourced, Trump man baby imagination. And so then we have a series of exchanges. You missing the joke. And then legit, what is the joke? And then someone else says, nobody tell them it's their loss. People love puns. And so then someone else, Dmitry Arkady, which might be like a Dostoevsky character, who knows, says, I've lost way too much time trying to figure out what the heck the joke is. Some hypotheses I came up with. The joke is something to do with the concentration of Hispanics in each of these states. The joke is something obscure and stupid. Well, maybe. The joke has something to do with recent news I haven't been paying attention to. The joke is that there is no joke. Everyone is doing that thing where they pretend they get it to fuck with everyone else. I'm genuinely mad right now. FOP. Wow, getting mad on the internet. Cool. And then someone else says, I'm at a loss for words. And then someone else, because this is tumblr.com, they said, I'm screaming, holy shit. And then we get even more obvious, but still people missing the joke. I'm at a loss here. If only there was a JPEG to help me out. So yeah, so this is what plays out on the internet, is that people hide this weird pattern in things, and a bunch of other people on the internet understand that pattern. And the fact that you embed this pattern into a piece of media makes that media re-energized, and it makes that media more likely to be spread. So if we go back to that picture of the ice where, you know, loss was embedded in it very lightly, we see that that picture is just kind of ordinary and maybe got passed around the internet, but it got passed around the internet more because it became a loss edit. And this is the way that memetics and imitation further the conversation in this way and really take art away from its aura, from its tradition, and creates new and collectivized possibilities for the creation, dissemination, and appreciation of art. Lost.jpg. Okay, so I like this one a lot. This is just a Lego, but really it is a series of images. So this is entitled The Process of Observing a Lost Edit. First, we're a little confused. We're seeing. Then we're looking even closer. We're seeing, could it be? And then, oh geez, is it? Oh no, is it? It is. It's lost.jpg. And this is what happens. It is like a Rickroll, basically. That, you know how people used to Rickroll people by hiding by tricking them into clicking on the video of Rick Astley. And so it's the same way where people hide this pattern to troll others who are in on the joke and to confuse those who are not in on the joke. So there's an aspect of this of return and repetition because it's the joke that it can be repeated so many times. I really like this one. This is my response to every Lost hater on the internet. I don't like Lost. Okay. And it is Lost. I love it. I love it. I love every part of this. And yeah. This is a really great example. This is what I was talking about before, where a lot of times on the internet, it seems that once a format has been around long enough, people like to combine it with other formats. And we can see this process right here in this, because this is a meme format based on Gru, I believe. Gru explaining meme. Yeah. So it's called Gru's Plan. And so this meme gets combined with Lost in this instance, where it's like, become a meme, that's the plan. Have lots of witty versions of yourself. Yay! Be in a Lost edit. Be in a Lost edit. And then you have his hands, if you guys didn't notice, doing Lost. So a person reading this meme who is familiar with the Gru's Plan meme and expect the punchline to be a certain way, then gets surprised by the inclusion of Lost, because Lost has been hidden within this other media that you're going to react to one way and you're going to expect certain things from it, but then that's subverted through the inclusion of this secret hidden pattern inside joke thing. And so yes, so then we started to have these kind of like meta conversations about the fact that every 4-panel comic gets accused of being a Lost edit, whether or not it is a Lost edit. And it became an inside joke to ask if something was a Lost edit when you clearly knew it was not. So to avoid people asking, is this Lost, I'm going to stop making comics like this. Instead, I'll try other types like 3 panels, and I'll try 1 big panel with 3 small ones. I'll try 2 panels or 3 tall ones. Maybe I'll even try 4 on top of each other or 4 in a row. And the irony is that this 4-panel comic is Lost. So here we have someone referencing the joke, making it explicit to someone who starts reading this, who like knows what Lost is, that this is a conversation about Lost. But then within that conversation and within that, representation, we actually have a Lost edit in itself. And so the internet and these iteration of memes are very recursive. And people like to mash up different types of meme formats, just like the way we like to remix other media. And so in this case, a person begins reading this, expecting it not to be a lost edit, and then in the end, it is a lost edit. So I like this. This is from The Underfold, which is a different webcomic. But guys, I bought an internet-powered robot. Isn't it neat? Sure. This has 4 panels. Is it lost? This was a mistake. So here we once again have, as part of the meme, as an auxiliary type of thing, the making fun of the 4-panel comic and the conventions of the 4-panel comic within web comics. And so, yeah, so here we have, hey man, you see that guy over there? He thinks every 4-panel meme is lost. And then this is lost. So this is the whole convention, and this is the activity that people like to participate in together. And so just one last thing. This was a conversation I had with a friend a while ago. And it was during one of the Lost Renaissances. And they said, no, stop, no, you're in a lost K-hole. Lost can't be everything. And I said, ha ha ha, well, okay, if you say so. That's the thing. Lost is kind of like Harambe. The worse it gets, the better it gets. And I disliked Lost. It can't be everything. You know, I just worry about you. That's so sweet. And then it ends up, yeah, everything can be lost because I made this conversation into a lost edit. And yeah, so lost.jpg, one of the most legendary and immortal memes, and also a meme that demonstrates the divorce of artwork from tradition. And none of these memes or edits are like less authentic than any of the other edits. Like this, like the ones that are in literal writing are not less authentic than the pictorial ones. And yeah, so this meme is not more authentic than this meme, even though this meme kind of contains the actual comic within it. And so then when we say that this is not even a lost edit, this is just lost in itself. So it's in some ways, you know, like, are these other iterations, these other memes, like, less authentically saying something about this situation than the original comic? They kind of aren't. And so we have this dislocation of the work of art here. And I just like to go back to the Benjamin really quick. Or actually, before we go back to the Benjamin, I do want to show the example, the Cyanide and Happiness. One of the best lost edits that ever existed. One moment. I would like to show the Cyanide and Happiness lost edit. So yeah, this is the one that Wang was talking about in the video. So we have person coming in, and then we have the scene as you might recognize it. And then we have him be sad, then think, then say, some years ago, I was in a relationship and we suffered a miscarriage. Now this relationship was toxic to begin with and doomed to fail regardless, so that the miscarriage was the last straw that broke the camel's back came as no surprise. Still, it's a tough thing to handle because it's nobody's fault, and I know that it's often much harder on the woman than on the man. However, I also know that it doesn't necessarily turn you into sad, depressed sack of tears for the rest of your life. People must move past it. Yeah, but Cyanide and Happiness still publishes, so does Penny Arcade. So does Penny Arcade, surprisingly. I actually have the current the current comic for Penny Arcade up. So Penny Arcade was another gaming webcomic. Let's see if Control-Alt-Delete is, oh my god, is it still current? Oh my god. Does it still go? Oh my god, is this, what is this from? Oh, he has a Kickstarter campaign. I'm scared. When is this from? Oh, it's literally, oh yeah. So these people are still kicking around. So is Penny Arcade. So is Cyanide and Happiness. Wow, the internet's a big place. But yeah, so this is another really good article that I'm gonna link from Know Your Meme. And then I just want to go back to the conclusion, so to say, of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. So something that Benjamin was very concerned with was fascism, because he was from Berlin, Jewish, and was living there before the rise of Hitler. So it was something that was very much informing his writing, and something that I was very concerned with. And so he begins and ends this piece, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, explicitly talking about fascism. And so I wanted to read the last paragraph. Oh, I forgot to look up what this means. Yikes. Okay, so it's Fiat Ars Periit Mundus. I actually don't, I forgot to look up. I kind of like always know what these things mean just because of context, but then usually I should like actually look this up. Let justice be done though the world perish. Okay, very, or let art be created. Oh, I understand. Okay, so let art be created though the world perish, which is a play on the phrase let justice be done though the world perish. So there we have that context. So let art be done though the world perish, says fascism, as Marinetti admits, expects war to supply artistic gratification of a sense perception that has been changed by technology. This is evidently the consumption of l'art pour l'art, or like art for art's sake. Mankind, which in Homer's time was an object of contemplation for the Olympian gods, now is one for itself. Its self-alienation has reached such a degree that it can experience its own destruction as an aesthetic pleasure of the first order. This is the situation of politics with which fascism is rendering aesthetic. Communism responds by politicizing art. So on the one hand, Benjamin is claiming that this doctrine of the beauty of art, or art for art's sake, and art disconnected from any kind of political meaning or message, is what allows fascism to have its power. So when we look at the grand parades of Hitler, when we even look at the way fascists used Pepe, divorced from his original meaning, to spread their own ideas, when we see this aestheticization and reclamation and, advocating for fascism using aesthetics and using art. Benjamin is saying that we can still reclaim these aesthetics and we can make them political. So the type of artifice that fascism uses to mystify, the mystification of patterns and just repeating something over and over, giving it significance without a larger context, can be opposed by taking these aesthetics and taking these pictures and giving them a political message. And so essentially what we have is the fact that so many people can now participate in this conversation, and so many people can interact with a single work of art, and they get to choose the context in which the artwork is displayed, and they get to choose what the artwork is paired with. They get to put the loss edit into a pre-existing piece of media, and because people understand the original message, which is actually a political message, it helps spread this political message, which is, hey, why don't you just not use women as plot devices? Because she's introduced, Buckley's wife is introduced, just because they're like, oh my God, how weird is it that there's a gamer girl and we need something to do? And, she's not really developed as a character. And then she's used as a plot device. And we have this super patriarchal, super just flat and inconsiderate view of her. And then what people were able to do is start mocking that by reproducing the pattern and reproducing this aesthetic shell and hiding that shell places so that others could see it and decode it in that way. And this made those pieces of media in which it was embedded more likely to spread, and it made the meme in itself more likely to spread. And so we take this empty shell of an artwork, this very rather vapid art, which is Control-Alt-Delete, and we're able to reclaim and re-politicize it. And the reason that we are able to do this is because we have come to understand art in a way that was inherently different from art as something for rituals, and inherently different from art as something to be displayed and something for to be displayed in a museum, in a singular place. We are divorced from the idea that our work has a singular place now, and so we get these new forms of arts and these new political possibilities for artwork through our collective transformation. And so there's still a lot of issues on the internet, obviously. So a lot of issues with memes. There's a lot of issues where, far-right people were using memes or creating memes and spreading their ideologies that way. And we must recognize these things and we must guard against them. But at the same time, we cannot overstep free speech, and we have to play the tape forward, where just because people we don't like are getting banned off this, that, and the other thing, doesn't mean that that might not happen one day to someone that we do like. And we really have to start to think about the ways in which our participation in this collective art is unfortunately pretty subsumed into the profits, motivations, and decisions of extremely, extremely large corporations. Corporations that are so large that we're not even sure if they're legal. And just because they're legal also doesn't mean that they're okay. But in any case, the politicization of this empty shell of a horrible webcomic was able to re-energize that pattern and to make a statement on the work within that webcomic through this reproduction and repetition of an abstract pattern. And it's what can be called the smallest possible visual hook. And that's something I read in a great article about memetics, which I will be covering in the future. But anyway, so I'm going to begin wrapping things up, but I really did want to give a couple minutes for anybody to ask any questions that they would like to ask, say anything, link something in the chat, as long as it's not like inappropriate or something. But don't give us any viruses. But yeah, I'll just give a sec for anybody to make whatever comment that they would like to make, and I will bring the kitty over. Here is my kitty Garfield. He's not really Garfield. His name is Linnaeus. He's a good kitty. He's a good kitty. He loves you. He loves you. Oh, he's so good. He's getting upset. Okay, but yeah, any questions, comments, concerns, anything? I'll give you a second. Oh, there's a very good kitty here. Oh no, my circle light is falling. Oh, look at how cute he is. Alrighty guys, this has been a wonderful experience. Thank you for coming to listen to Art in the Age of Memetic Reproduction. I hope it has been enlightening. It's been certainly fun for me to revisit these material. First given as a lecture in 2018 during the last Lost Renaissance when I was teaching a class on memes at Hunter College. But anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you on Wednesday.